Good afternoon, class. Today, the lesson that we're going to do today is from section 6.4, and it's referring to a third type of an equation to a line. We've talked about slope-intercept in standard form. Today, we're going to talk about point-slope form of a linear equation, where the point slope of an equation is where they give you a point, x1, y1. And that x1, y1, that 1 is just a subscript. It doesn't mean that x is 1. So it's just labeling it. So we could have an x sub 2 or an x sub 3 and so on. It would just be labels to x's. So those are going to be a specific x and y coordinate. And they're going to give you a slope m. So here's an example. Suppose you know that a line passes through the point 3, 4. Well, we're going to allow 3 to be x1 and 4 to be y1 for purposes of identifying the coordinate. And then the slope is 2, so that means m is 2. So by looking at the formula, we can substitute the numbers in. 3 for x1, 4 for y1, and 2 for the slope. And we get an equation, y minus 4 equals 2 parentheses x minus 3. Now by doing some simple algebraic steps, we can distribute that 2 to get y minus 4 equals 2x minus 6, and then add 4 to both sides, and we can turn our equation into a form that is identical to the other forms we did. This would be considered the slope-intercept form of the line, but we started it in the point slope form. So by distributing and moving that minus 4 over by adding 4, we get an equation, y equals 2x minus 2. They represent the same equation, just written two different ways, two different forms. So let's go through an example and have you write an equation given that information. So here's an example. We have a slope of negative 2. So here's our m. And then we have a given point, 3, negative 3. So x1, we're going to let that be 3. y1, we're going to let that be negative 3. So we're just going to simply substitute them into the given formula where we have x1 or y1 right here, x1 right here, and m right there. We're just going to substitute those given numbers right into that formula. So you'll notice that we end up with y minus a negative 3. Now, I want you to be careful here. We have to put parentheses here because y1 was negative 3. We don't want to confuse that with the minus that's out front. So we want to keep that negative 3 in there. Then we get negative 2 parentheses x minus 3. We now, by simplifying, minus a negative here can just be plus 3. So we can simplify that. So there's your equation. Y plus 3 equals negative 2 parentheses x minus 3. We're going to leave the form in this manner for now. Later on, we'll start having you simplify that down to slope-intercept form. Well, for right now, just understand that this is the equation in point-slope form. So let's look at how that would look graphing something like that. What if we had to graph the equation y minus 2 equals 1/3 parentheses x minus 1. The easiest way to do this is to identify what is the given point and what is the slope. Well, we can see that 2 is in the place of where y1 would be. 1 is in the place of x1. And 1/3 is in the place of m. So we're going to identify the slope to be 1/3 and the given point to be 1, 2. 1, 2. So we just simply graph the point 1, 2, and then from 1, 2, we go up 1 and over 3 to graph the slope. So it's very similar to graphing slope-intercept form, except rather than start at the y-intercept, we're going to start at a point that is given. You just have to identify that point. The third and last thing I'm going to have you do is make an equation from a graph. So over here, I gave you information. I gave you a point, and I gave you a slope, and I had you graph an example. Now we're going to go backwards. I'm going to give you a graph. Hold on here. Maybe. I'm sorry about all the extra slides there. I'm going to give you a graph, and I'm going to ask for you to write the equation. Now remember, what are the two things that we need to write an equation? Well, we need x1 and y1, and we need m, which is just the slope. Well, if you remember from section 6.1, the slope is just subtracting two y values over subtracting two x values. So we can just simply find the slope by using that formula, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Subtract the two given points that we have. So we have 4 minus 3. That would be the two y values, 4 minus 3. And then we're going to subtract the two x values, negative 1 and 2, and get a slope of negative 1/3. So m is negative 1/3. So after we've identified that the slope is negative 1/3, we can now use our point slope formula to write an equation. I'm going to let negative 1, 4 be my x1, y1. And it really doesn't matter which point you pick. You can use either one. And I'll show you how you get the same equation using either one. So we're now just going to use our general formula. We found that the slope was negative 1/3. So like I said, we're putting m to be negative 1/3. 4 is going to be our y1. And negative 1 is our x1. Do recognize that because x1 is negative 1, we can change that minus a negative 1 to plus 1 in the equation. So by taking that equation, we can simplify that by distributing the 1/3 and adding the 4 over. So plus 4 to both sides. And we get the equation negative 1/3 x plus 3 2/3. Now I'm going to pull up another slide, and I'm going to take this same equation, but I'm going to use the other point, 2, 3. Notice that 2, 3 is the other point, and I'll show you that we get the same exact equation just using 2, 3. So our slope was negative 1/3, and we're going to use the point 2, 3 in our point slope formula, and I'll show you that you get exactly the same equation. It's just a matter of how you write it. So y minus, our y is 3 in this case, here, so here's y1, equals, our slope is negative 1/3, x minus, our x1 was 2, so we're going to put 2 in there. So we get an equation by distributing the negative 1/3, add 3 to both sides, and we get the same equation negative 1/3 x plus 3 2/3 was the exact same equation that we had over here using the other 2 points. So here's the same equation. So when you go to write your equations in your homework assignment tomorrow, it doesn't matter which point you use, you'll get the same equation when you simplify it down to slope-intercept form. So we'll do some practicing of this tomorrow. Make sure that you have these notes written down because this will help you in referring back to these examples I've done when you go to do your assignment tomorrow in class.